And thanks to everybody. Thank you to everybody here today for joining the session. Apologies if you had to key in your link a few times to get in, but I'm so delighted that we have a really good number of attendees and it's going up literally by the second here. So as you know, anybody who's here today will know the format of these sessions. It's very informal. We're not always going to answer everything as you know, as maybe you would want it, but we will do our best. And if there are things that come up in the conversations and in the questions and we can't answer them, we'll take them offline and we'll do what we can to come back to you with an answer. So it's the best we can do. We've got a really, really good panel of experts today. We've got experts from many areas in the customs sphere, both north and south. And we've had a lot of questions pre-submitted in advance of the event as well. So I will pepper those in through the session as well. I'm going to take the ones that are in the Q&A and also ones that have got in advance. So just bear with me, and if I do miss them, feel free to email me when the webinar is over and say you missed that, and I'll come back to you on it. But as I say, it's all about just doing our best to try and answer some of the questions. And today's session really is focusing on customs. We'll touch on transit, we'll touch maybe on you know, customs audits and you know, audits if that comes up as well, and really any pressing issues that you have in this space. You've got plenty of expertise, and usually I would give everybody an introduction, but I think we've got I'll call you out the names, and I think our speakers will introduce themselves today. So today our speakers are Ray Ryan from Revenue. We've got Derek Dunne from Manifest Ireland, Gareth Armstrong from Abbey VAT and Customs, Vera Murphy from Bevan Murphy Consulting, and Brendan McAuley from Trade Advisors, and Martina Keenan from InterTradeIreland. All very worthy in their fields, and I'm just going to very much pass over then to the first speaker of the day, which is Ray, who will give an introduction, and then we'll pass on to the next one. Thank you, Ray.
Thanks, Deirdre. Yeah, my own name is Ray Ryan. I'm from the Customs Division within Revenue, and I've been working, I suppose, on the Brexit trader engagement going back to 2018. So I've been there in the preparation phases, and since then, obviously, since the 1st of January 2021, dealing with the impact of it. Just to give an idea of the scale, the Revenue annual report was just published yesterday. There was 27 million customs declarations, import declarations made last year, versus 1 million in 2020. So that'll give you the scale of what businesses have faced in terms of customs declarations in the past year. And I suppose on the call today, I'll try and deal with as many questions as I can. As many of you know, customs involves different aspects from VAT, customs, excise, the actual declarations, the type of declarations. So I hope I'll be able to help in some manner, Deirdre. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I can't believe that figure. It's astonishing. It really is. So I'm just going to then pass over to Derek Dunne.
Yeah, good morning, Deirdre, and thank you very much
Derek.
for having me this morning. Yeah, just to introduce myself, I'm the Managing Director of Manifest Ireland. We're a customs brokerage company based in Dublin, and our sole purpose of our business is doing customs declarations. I've been involved in customs declarations for 30 odd years now, so I suppose I was fortunately one of those dinosaurs who remembered how the process worked and how it was done and how it would evolve and change and fit in with revenue. So yeah, that 27 million, I'm afraid, doesn't surprise me. But it is a really good snapshot of the realistic of where we're at. I think we've moved to phase 2 of Brexit now. Heretofore we were all going, what's going to happen here for when, and we're now living it. We're seeing the realities of it, and I think it's a really good opportunity to revisit now and for business to look at what they're doing and how they're doing it, and maybe more competitive and better ways of doing it.
Fantastic, Derek. Thank you. Very, very well said. So next I got passed over to Gareth Armstrong from Abbey VAT. Gareth, you're very welcome. Thanks for joining us today. I will just help you just unmute there, Gareth.
Hello, good morning. My name is Gareth Armstrong from Abbey VAT Customs Services. My background is HMRC for 30 odd years. I go back as far as the Irish land boundary, worked at the airport, and the latter part of my career was VAT. So I'm now in the private sector dealing with TSS, VAT issues, and so on. So I help with customs declarations and general advice, mainly through TSS.
Thank you, Gareth. So you're busy then as well.
Yeah.
Yes, and so that's great because you will have an understanding then of the angle on the northern side as well. So we have a good coverage today. So thank you. And then we have Vera Murphy from Bevan Murphy Consulting. Vera, you're very welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Deirdre. Thanks very much for the invite to be on the panel. So my name is Vera Murphy. I'm the founder of Bevan Murphy Customs Limited. To give you a little bit of my background, I've worked in international trade and global forwarding for 30 years now, in various capacities in the EU and also on projects further afield like the US and China. For the last 5 years, I suppose, I've been almost focused exclusively on working with companies in Ireland and the United Kingdom, helping them to meet their customs obligations. The InterTrade voucher schemes are a big part of that because they facilitate me to provide very specific, customized practical training and advice to InterTrade clients as part of the areas I cover, like tariff classification, customs valuation, rules of origin and claiming preference, and also then Incoterms, which really dictates how much responsibility each of the supply chain members have within the movement, including who's going to submit the customs declarations. In addition to that, there has been a demand for traders who want to take their customs declarations in-house, where they want to control them themselves. So I trained on the various systems and interfaces to enable them to do that. And also then forwarders who want to be able to offer both the movement of the goods and also offer brokerage as part of their services. So I provided training on that. So I look forward to your questions and to us collectively providing the support you need today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vera. And we know that you have a vast range of experience in all of this. And we're so happy that you took the time to join us today. So thank you so much for that. And again, Brendan McAuley, another fantastic consultant, trade advisors, who we're delighted, Brendan, that you're joining us today as well. So thank you.
So thank you very much, Deirdre. No, and we're delighted to be here. I'll say a little bit about trade advisors. We set up in 2017 after the referendum, as we know, and to help guide companies and government bodies on the different challenges that they face when it comes to international trade. So we've been doing some of that. Many of the topics that Vera mentioned, we've also been working on, the core issues of valuation, origin, classification, Incoterms, and we, as you said, we do a consultancy work as well as training. At the end of last year, we also set up the International Trade Institute, which is offering diplomas in international trade compliance to help companies cope with the different challenges that they face and to anticipate the troubles that may come down the line. And so we may say a few words about that later on, but delighted to have been invited to speak today and to talk about some of our experiences. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Brendan. And I know that you work very closely with businesses and have been for a long time. So you'll know the very real issues as well that they're experiencing. And then just very quickly, Martina Keenan from InterTradeIreland. Martina, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you're going to speak at some point in the session just on supports. Martina, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Deirdre. Look, I hope that everybody has their questions answered on, on the customs issues today, and you learn from other company experiences. So I just want to go through just firstly what Brexit supports we have available. So we just want to let you know that the Brexit's voucher support is still open. You can avail of up to €2,250 fully funded consultancy advice. So that may be in the form of attending one of the many training courses available, or you can avail of one-to-one support from our many service providers, some of which are on our panel today and others are in attendance at the webinar. So look, the voucher's open to cross-border businesses who have less than 250 employees and less than €50 million turnover. And what I mean to be cross-border is that if you buy or sell your goods or services in the opposite jurisdiction to where you're based. So look, the application form has been made as straightforward as possible. It shouldn't take longer than 15 minutes, and it'll be accessed through our website, InterTradeIreland.com. So if you follow on through to the Brexit section, you'll see the full details there. Once your application is assessed and approved, you're sent out terms of reference, and basically that's a form for you both to complete, to detail the work that's to be carried out. and there's a quick turnaround in these. We're working on the basis of like 10 working days. So if you need any extra help or support after this webinar, you know, it's a quick and easy process from application to getting the service provider to work, you know, within your business. The voucher can be used in a wide range of Brexit issues, from customs, obviously, VAT, people, regulations, but also can help employers manage their cash flow, finance issues, perhaps as well looking at your overall business structure and contracts within your business. So look, information is on our website, and all these issues under post-Brexit supports and advice section is under there as well. Look, we appreciate that there's a vast amount of information out there, so we've written it that is easily read and understood, and there's various links to the government departments within Northern Ireland and Ireland. It also has how-to videos for checking commodity codes, for example. It's an FAQ session, and obviously webinars such as these who have previously been recorded. So there's another source of information for you as well. Just that I hope you gain from the session today and get your questions answered. And so log on to our website after the session today, and if you need further help and support, the Brexit voucher is still open, and all advice on each of the topics covered is there as well. So thank you, Deirdre.
Brilliant.
All right.
You, Martina, and we'll put some of those up like things into the links.
Into the chat, yeah.
So look, I see the questions are coming in. I know we're going to be busy. I'm going to move quickly as I usually do and try and get through as many as I can. I'm going to start with the ones that are in the Q&A, and I will take a pit stop and go into the list I have of the ones that have been sent in advance. Okay. So the very first one in the C&E report in ROS, it shows VAT paid. Does this represent the VAT paid couriers when they deliver goods? So now I'm wondering, is that one, is the ROS system for you, Ray?
Yeah, it's probably the C&E ROS reports, the Revenue Online Service. So there's reports issued, there's a weekly transaction list. So if your URI number is used on any customs declaration, you'll get the weekly transaction list, and there's the list of details there. If you're the payer on it, you'll get a monthly statement also. So it looks like this could be one where the agent or declarant is paying. And once the VAT is paid, is listed on it, then it's covered. So someone has paid revenue. Usually on the weekly transaction lists, you'll see a TAN number as well, or a declarant's URI number, so you'll know who made the declaration on their behalf. It's always good to validate it, because there can be errors made in declarations in terms that it might be an incorrect URI was used, and you just need to validate that these goods were for you and you have a relevant invoice matching up with that customs declaration. So it's always useful to validate both the weekly transaction list, and then if you are actually payer, the monthly statements as well.
Okay, great.
So I hope
that's as always a mine of information.
Sorry, if I could just add something to that as well, just on the courier and having VAT prepaid on your behalf. Some of the courier companies overlook or don't engage with the postponed VAT, which is a facility which Revenue made available, or the Irish government made available to importers, that they can postpone the VAT rather than pay it up front and make the declaration then, or make the payment in the next VAT return. So it's important, if you do get demands for VAT and you want to postpone it, make sure that the courier company is aware of that and to declare the goods accordingly.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you, Derek. So the next one, what are the rules and regulations for parcels coming into and out of Ireland? Do I need customs declarations? And what about parcels coming into Northern Ireland?
I can answer a bit on the Irish piece first. Anyway.
Right, okay.
Customs declarations are required for all goods coming in. So that's the way I put it. More than likely, if it's coming through the post, it's either a parcel post operator, express carrier, or on post, or doing the declarations on your behalf. And that's what usually happens. So you may not be aware of it, but there is certain information they actually need from the suppliers in the other country to complete those declarations. So it's important that you just have an awareness that there could be one charge, as customs usually, or VAT charges, and that there is actually a declaration in the background of that. So even if you are returning goods, there's a return and potentially refunds through the customs declaration system. So there's a lot of considerations there in terms of that. That's just from the revenue point of view.
Brilliant. And anybody know about the northern side? Are there grace periods for that, or we'll come back to that?
Yeah, no, it's currently under a grace period, Deirdre, where nothing is required.
Yeah.
Whether that'll change, I don't know.
Who knows? Thank you, Derek.
It's been kicked down the road a few times, Deirdre, that one.
Has it?
So,
yeah. Okey-dokey. Okay, this is a long one, so I'm going to read it out. I think this is going to be focusing on Incoterms. So I will go for it here. So goods are arriving from GB under DDP terms, where the supplier is using a courier under indirect representation and is not registered for VAT in Ireland. The courier effectively pays the VAT over to revenue and then bills on to the UK supplier. First of all, is this an acceptable practice? I'll answer that one, but ask that bit first. So goods from GB under DDP, indirect representation, not registered for VAT, and courier pays the VAT to the revenue. Is this acceptable? Garth, would you know that one?
I don't really. Is that revenue into the south?
Yeah, it's. I'm just thinking about this.
Yeah, sorry, just looking at under the DDP terms, delivered duty paid, the clearance would be the responsibility of the shipper of the goods. Now, what I find interesting there is that the courier under indirect representation, I would be surprised if a courier is acting under indirect representation, because they would be taking some of the responsibility. What I suspect is actually happening here is that the goods are being cleared under the ERI number of the importer, but the VAT is being paid by the exporter through the courier company. So the declaration, so the importer of record has been shown as the Irish importer. Again, going back to the question earlier on, your ROS report, you'll see if it's in there. If they've used your ERI number, it'll appear on the C&E weekly declaration. So that's why it's very important to do a reconciliation on those reports and to know what declarations are being made on your behalf, because in a lot of cases, those declarations, you may not be aware of them, but you are responsible for them. So it's really important to check that out.
It just shows you actually how important it is for businesses to get that little bit extra support, because it is very, very specific, isn't it? If it's not an area that you're used to working in, there are so many things to be mindful of and to understand and learn about in this here.
For sure, it's the phase 2 that I mentioned earlier on.
Yeah,
it's living with the realities of it now and making sure that you've got everything covered and that you know what's being done in your name and who's doing it and how it's being done.
Yeah.
The
so
other
anyway,
aspect,
it's a good question, isn't it?
Sorry, George. Yeah, it is. It's a good one and an important one, as Derek said, in terms of if you are listed as the importer of record on those customs declarations, you have responsibility for the details that were entered. If there's any customs audits followed up, if there's any issues in terms of what was declared, and that may lead to additional charges, VAT and customs duty. If that supplier in the UK is not listed anywhere on the declaration outside of the exporter field, then it will either be you or the declarant that will be, I suppose, in terms of the customs audits or post-clearance checks, that's where it will start. So again, if you're unsure of the process, you need to clarify exactly what's happening, exactly what the declarant is doing. And under DDP, it really should be the supplier is listed with an Irish VAT number and an Irish ERI number, because they're taking ownership of the responsibility of both customs duty and VAT under DDP. But again, within your sales contracts, it should be very clear. If there's any ambiguity, clear it up, and don't assume anything. Don't assume. Make sure it's clear, because down the line, 2-3 years down the line, if you're trying to chase up what happened on that movement in April 2021, it's going to be difficult.
And that's another very valid point as well, Ray, for any companies out there. I mean, what's in your sales contract is so important. So any businesses here will need to know what your terms of trade are, because it does affect your pricing and it does affect what you pay and how you report it. So again, it's all about the detail. I think you kind of answered the next question there. So can the supplier bill with a GB VAT number? You've kind of answered that, Ray, there. Can they though?
They can, in normal circumstances, let's say a straightforward one, it will be, you'll be using that GB invoice for your customs declaration, and then it will be converted on the customs declaration into euros, etc. But if they're paying the VAT piece out of it, it's just how is that? I'm not sure how that invoice is being created. Are you seeing any VAT on it? You shouldn't be charged any UK VAT anyway, because it's zero rated for exporting purposes in the UK anyway, so you shouldn't see any GB VAT on it. But it's just interesting to see what way the invoice you have and you can see and what's stated on it. Okay,
I think that's a fairly decent enough answer for that question. So I'm going to move on then. So this one for Ray, Probably relevant for both Northern Ireland businesses as well, though, because de minimis aid is now state aid and it's also connected with at-risk goods. So has there any information on de minimis aid claim? I believe it is to import goods over a 3-year period. Can this be used to import ROI and NI separately for a company who has separate entities both sides of the border? So question is on de minimis aid, but I guess there are now two sets of rules from Northern Ireland businesses and businesses in Southern Ireland. I'm sure, Gareth, you'll be aware of businesses who are using their state aid in order to claim preferential tariffs for moving from the north to south. But Ray, I'm going to come to you first then. Any information on de minimis aid claim? I believe it is to import goods over a 3-year period. Can this be used to import to ROI and NI separately for a company who has separate entities both sides of the border? I have a feeling that's an at-risk question, but
I don't think it applies in ROI. What I'll do is I don't know, straight up. I will check it out, and if there is anything in relation to customs in Ireland on the revenue side, I'll follow up with you and you can go forward on to the participants.
Thank
but
you.
I'm not aware of it, and I think if it was something like that, I would be.
Yeah. Gareth, would you know about okay.
Obviously I can't talk about the ROI, but in Northern Ireland this has been used quite a bit to cover potential duties for goods at risk. And the problem we're running into is people are at their limit, and a lot of the goods have remained in Northern Ireland, and there's no mechanism from HMRC to adjust their TSS claims. So this is an ongoing problem. And I've been in discussions with HMRC on it. As yet, there's no resolution, but it's quite it'll have to be taken to a higher level. But there's quite a few of my clients are using the customs duty waiver, especially car dealers, because there's potentially 10%. There's a quarterly return to put in, and it's for goods at risk that are not in the UK trader scheme. So,
okay. And Gareth, the rules would be if you exceed your levels, then you revert to paying the tariffs. That's the current rules for the moment, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
That is happening.
Okay.
But the problem is that 90% of those goods might have remained in Northern Ireland, but there's no mechanism for adjusting your TSS account.
Okay, and just following that, because I remember this question being asked before it came into the Brexit Advisory Service. Somebody wanted to retrospectively change the decision that they'd made when they said their goods were at risk. And from memory, there was a postal form. Is there a postal form that you sent? It might be a little bit cumbersome.
Yeah, as a repayment of duty, that's done through HMRC. Now, I haven't actually done it yet because it hasn't applied to my clients, but there's no mechanism for actually adjusting your TSS declaration as such, so that for example, that your subsidy running limit on TSS is reduced.
Right, okay. Okay.
So, but it is an ongoing problem, and if I get a resolution to it, I will.
Good to be aware of that. Thank you. Okay, so good morning. And this is a Republic of Ireland company has been importing goods from Northern Ireland, which had come from a GB distributor's stock into Belfast without declaration at risk. Okay, so they've come into GB, but subsequently some were sold across the border. If goods were imported direct from GB, duty would be payable. How can an Irish company now declare above imports from Northern Ireland and settle the duty liable? So journey of the goods, GB to Northern Ireland, not at risk, then sold to Ireland. Does anybody want to take that one?
The usual case.
Sorry.
No,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So I suppose just I know we're talking retrospectively, but it's the company. It's not really an import from NI to the Republic of Ireland. It's whoever they're bringing the goods in from NI, the company in the south, that should be declaring the goods. If they're using the TSS system, they could use apportionment, which would be where they need years, I think it's 3 years of historical records. So this would be kind of going forward from here, and then I'll talk about what to do about what's already happened. But they would need 3 years of historical records to and an average would be taken about how much of the goods actually end up in the south. If they're is duty. Like if you look at the EU tariff and it shows duties for those goods that did move onto the south. If it shows 0% duty, then no duty is due. But if it actually shows up a duty amount, then there would be duty due on those goods. How they go about retrospectively doing that, like the goods are already, I would imagine, and maybe Ray can come in on this, I'd imagine, Ray, they'd have to get in touch with revenue about that.
The aspect of it is, from an Irish point of view, that if the Irish company has a sales invoice from the Northern Irish company, they're reporting that in their VAT returns. The aspect in terms of clearance is done, as I said, through the TSS or through NI HMRC and rectifying it there on the Northern Irish company. From the Irish company's point of view, they've done everything correctly. They've purchased with an NI sales invoice and they're going to do the reporting in their VAT returns. So it's an inter-community sales for all purposes.
And would this be a good time to mention audits? So if, for example, an auditor came in to look at that, I know Brenda will be close to this subject, in a year's time and looked at that audit customs transaction, how would that work?
If the goods were, sort of depending on the percentage of the goods were, the percentage of the goods that were at risk, they would be looking at whether at the time of import duty should have been paid on those goods that were moving to the south. Okay. So I'm not 100% sure on the TSS system. I guess if they have access to the TSS system, I'd go in or ask my agent to raise a case. Yes. Okay. Or use the helpline, use the TSS helpline and see what can be done about the percentage of the goods which were retrospectively at-risk goods. Okay. And Brendan, I know you've been working very closely with businesses on the audit and getting them ready and doing preparatory work. Do you want to just give us a minute or two on that, actually, and then we'll move to the next question?
No, I'm glad to, Deirdre. Thank you. So, I mean, as Ray alluded to at the start of the session, the number of customs declarations has increased. You know, even if we're just looking at Ireland, the number of declarations has increased by a huge figure there. You know, because and suddenly, you know, the speed at which companies which hadn't traded internationally have had to move and to learn and gain new customs knowledge in order to complete these declarations or have them completed on their behalf is also quite impressive. And so, you know, and often they started off with, you know, potentially a little knowledge base or no knowledge base or completely relying on others to do it for them. So what we have seen is a requirement for what we see as kind of training in the audit space. The number of audits has really increased. So in 2021, it was 464,000 customs audit or compliant interventions in the Republic of Ireland alone, which is about 85,000 more than the year before. And the number of you know, unpaid taxes or interest penalties has also increased for about 1.4 billion euros in 2021. That's about 1 million more than the year before. So in terms of what you know, this is becoming increasingly common. Probably will become increasingly common because now, of course, there's this whole other border, and anyone can be selected for audits. I don't mean to scare everyone here, but they can look back 3 years for customs purposes, 7 years for VAT, and in essence, what companies need to have is a series of standard operating procedures that they can work through to make sure that they are as compliant as possible when it comes to classification or valuation or origin or Incoterms, which have all come up already, and to make sure that they keep the documentation and provide the evidence whenever required by revenue. But if anyone has any questions on audits, we'd be delighted to chat through them later or to offer a free consultation of sorts, if that would be helpful.
Okay, and it just brings me to one other thing, which I think I think it's a very important thing to do. And so it would be, if I was to say to you, Brendan, Are your commodity codes, if you're a business and you've spent the last 6 months or year getting your commodity codes right for your product, you've plugged them into your system, you pass them on to your team or yourself, and you rely that they're correct. I mean, what would be the best advice that you would give that business in terms of best practice, in terms of checking them? How often would you need to refresh them, for example?
Sure. Well, I think that the way to be 100% compliant, or the only way to be completely compliant, is to apply for binding tariff information rulings, say in the Republic, or advanced tariff rulings in Great Britain. And this is where you apply to the Revenue Authority. You say what the commodity code is that you have, the full description of the product, potentially images or pictures to support it, and they'll then give you a ruling which is valid for 3 years as to what the correct code is. It then expires after that 3-year period, so you'd have to continuously reapply over time. But that's probably the best way to be as compliant as possible.
Okay, and if you weren't as compliant as, if you didn't do the binding tariff, for example, I mean, this is just my own question, then I'm going to quickly move. The WTO, do they change the codes very often?
They do. The codes change. The codes change fairly regularly. They have a major review, one which every 5 years. I think one has just happened in 2022.
Okay.
So they add new codes. So, you know, for example, in and around COVID. So there were new codes for you know, certain medical products, or new inventions, things that have become increasingly commonly traded. So they do change them. So it is important to check it. And there is Ray, maybe you have something on this, but there is a revenue update sent out that you can keep you up to date about if your codes have changed. And if you have binding tariff information ruling for your goods, you'll also be notified if there are changes to the commodity code.
Brilliant. Okay, what I'm going to do, if you don't mind, is nip into some of the questions that I got in advance here, and then there's just a few here that I'll pick out. So there's one question that came in, and it says, we repair damaged goods that arrive from the UK and then obviously return the repaired items. Can you explain the customs of the revenue requirements, please? As obviously the damaged goods have effectively a zero value, while the value of the repaired goods is variable. They sometimes have new parts installed, but sometimes the repair is labour only. Anybody want to take that one? Will I read it again?
I can take it from the revenue point of view. When I come into Ireland, it's GB. Moving the goods, customs declarations again. Doesn't matter if it's coming in for repair, but you can avail of certain procedures and certain processes. So it's there's an inward processing type, which basically suspends any payment of duties and VAT, and then it's exported back out, so re-exported. But again, it's just important to remember that there's also, you're exporting from GB, importing into Ireland, then re-exporting from Ireland and re-importing into GB. So you need to know the steps, who's responsible for each part of the customs declaration, and again, to make sure that you don't actually pay duties on the return into HMRC2 to do the correct processing there. So there is options there available to have reliefs. But if you just import it as a normal good into Ireland, the value will apply on it, and then re-export it back out and import it normally. Again, there'll be duties. There'll be duties both ways if you don't do it correctly under the correct procedures.
And is inward processing something?
Sorry, inward processing, yeah.
Okay.
Inward processing relief, and you can apply for that to revenue.
Okay, and would be the same then on the northern side as well?
It will be more than likely, yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah, there's the same procedure here. There's a certain procedure code for that.
Okay.
But I think TSS now supported it. I haven't done it, but as far as I'm aware, it's supported.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a very general question that came into. Right, okay, it's a very general question, and I'm not sure if the person that asked it is on the webinar. If they are, you could maybe come into the Q&A on it. But it's about I'll just read it out here. It's about buying an aircraft. What are the implications of buying an aircraft from GB to Ireland and GB to Northern Ireland? So if I just take that into the implications of buying something that large with many, many products, many components coming from GB into Northern Ireland or GB into Ireland. I wonder, is that question about rules of origin, or is it, if there's somebody on the webinar who's asked that, maybe you would put that into the chat. Otherwise, you just have to take it as a general question.
It could be private aircraft, similar like private boats. So it could be just the movement from GB into Ireland or into Northern Ireland and what applies. So if unless it's a full import, it might be temporary admission, just depending on what it is. I doubt it's commercial aircraft. So I'd say it's more than likely private. So in that case, it could be flying into Ireland maybe for the holidays, fly over and back. There's temporary admission allowed there, and I think there's certain periods. I know for vessels, for boats, I think it's longer than aircraft. I just don't know the full details. It could be that, it could be temporary admission, but if not, if it's a full import, then it's full customs declarations and any customs duty or VAT that would apply. Temporary admission would probably be suspending that for whatever period it is.
Okay, super.
To add to that as well, Deirdre, just to kind of add to what Ray said, if it is, and I also think it's probably unlikely, but if it was kind of a full import, there are commodity conditions along with those products. Just in terms of there would be licenses required if there was halons or fluorinated gases or any of those kind of things associated with them. There would be duty as well, which is listed as 2.7%. I just had a quick look at it there. So again, then you'd be going back to kind of the details and the rules of origin. The rules of origin would go down to commodity level. With the information, if it was a full import, kind of the first questions that we would be asking would be, it breaks down commodity code based on the use of it, as Ray mentioned, but also based on the weight of it. So if it's less than 2,000 kgs, if it's between 2,000 kgs and 15,000 kgs, and then 15,000 kgs onwards, I think up to 24,000 or something. So that would dictate the commodity code, and then it's the commodity code that would dictate the rules of origin.
Okay, so many rules. So many rules.
Yeah, absolutely. We've rules coming out our ears.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. That's great. So the next thing then, a UK agent failed to select postponed accounting and charged the exporter Irish VAT on imports. How can we remedy the situation?
We're back here to just chatting about the postponed VAT accounting. And it's effective in both Ireland and the UK GB, where business can postpone the VAT instead of paying it up front. If it's not done at the declaration stage, then the VAT is payable on arrival of the shipment. If an agent has cleared something and should have postponed the VAT, they can go and amend that declaration and they can change it. In the UK side, I'm not quite so sure how simple that is, but from the UK perspective, from the Irish perspective, it should be reasonably straightforward. There may be need to apply for a refund as well, depending on the process. But essentially, it's really important that when you've got an agent acting on your behalf, that you give them clear instructions on what to do, because a lot of them are dealing with big volumes, and the finer points get lost sometimes. So it's really important if you've got somebody acting on your behalf, they're making a declaration on your behalf, you're bearing the responsibility. So make sure that you give them clear, concise instructions on what you want them to do.
Great advice. So that's good, clear communications to your agents if they're acting in your behalf. Okay, thank you, Dirk. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go to the bottom and then I'll come back up to the top. Just to be fair, in case we don't get to the bottom. So my query relates to goods being brought into Northern Ireland from GB with a TSS declaration. Okay, the good we import attracts 0% duty. Some of these goods will be sold to ROI customers. When completing the supplementary return, is it acceptable to select goods are not at risk, NI or EM? Garth, maybe that's one for yourself.
Yeah, if there's a zero tariff, you can just select them as not at risk, but they need to register for the UK Trader Scheme.
Okay, dokie. Thank you. Right, I'm going to go back to the top then. Is there a way to tell revenue not to, I'm sorry, but a lot of these are coming in for revenue. Is there a way to tell revenue not to allow companies to use your EORI number to import? When Brexit kicked off, I think our EORI was given out, but now we have a grasp on it and we can see that suppliers are using our EORI despite being on DDP terms.
The only person that should be allowed to use your EORI is a declarant. They need permissions to actually do it. So if you contact eCustoms accounts at revenue.ie, they should be able to give you a list of who has authorization to use your URI. You shouldn't be used. So me as a declarant, I can't use your URI, Deirdre, unless I've given permission, and it's a system-based, so there's a certain form to fill out. So even if you notice that suppliers are doing it, they're probably just providing that URI to an agent or freight forwarder. But again, it's going back to those, whoever's completing declarations, you need to advise them that of that, or else if you're not satisfied, just remove that authorization to that declarant, to that specific declarant.
Okay. And this is just a comment. I'm going to read it out, and then so it was just, I think it was following up, Vera, to one of your responses. Thanks, Vera. That's it. That is our understanding. Both some UK companies insist on entering a 23% value, which in turn customs seek to be added on to the entry. Thank you. So just going to read that one out. And that one there, I'm not sure. Maybe that was to do with, yes.
So I can kind of give a, so it was to do with whether the VAT needs to be stated,
Okay.
or it was a legal requirement for the VAT amount to be stated on the commercial invoice. So what I was saying is that the VAT is calculated based on the price paid for the goods, plus insurance, plus freight, plus whatever duty is owing, and then the VAT calculated on top of that. Most commercial invoices, when you put in that information, or sorry, most commercial interfaces into the customs system, when you put in that information, it'll actually calculate out the VAT. You choose a code like VAT S, so that would be for standard VAT, or VAT Z for zero VAT. So the actual customs interface itself will calculate that, and then that goes through as part of the SAD. So my take on it is that it doesn't have to be on the commercial invoice, but maybe Ray might have a different take on that. But what the sorry, I've lost the question here myself. What the person who asked me, is it Shane who asked the question, is saying that sometimes sometimes it's put on the commercial, or put on the commercial invoice, so then they have to put it in the put it in the, if I'm reading it right, put it actually in the answer themselves as well.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so we're going to move on then. So if the supplier, UK supplier, is sending goods by DDP, or they have set up an Irish subsidiary or have a European subsidiary, do you need to give the supplier your ERI number, as essentially they're covering all the costs?
No, what should happen there is that on the import declaration, it's technically UK VAT number selling to an Irish VAT number, but it's the same company as such, that the company set up here, or an EU company. But the end company, the final sale should be from a European VAT number to the Irish end customer. So your sales invoice that you receive should be from either an Irish VAT number or another EU VAT number. That's the way it should be. You shouldn't be getting an invoice from a UK VAT number.
Okay, thank you so much. It seems to be a lot of the questions seem to be focusing around DDP today for some reason. Is that a very popular Incoterm?
Yeah, I think it was previously, it would have been pre-Brexit, it was almost unstated, and then it just carried on. But I think people are, because of all these questions, and it's coming up regularly on a number of sessions, people are reassessing them. And in particular, actually, when your accountant or your tax person or your person that's looking after financial matters are trying to do the VAT returns and trying to track it, it starts to raise a lot of questions then. So sometimes it's not at the time, but it's more than likely down the line. And even then, sometimes we're seeing under the post-clearance checks or under customs audits that businesses aren't exactly sure what they're doing in terms of their VAT. Okay. And it's usually linked back to what the Incoterms were. So it's something to be very wary of.
Okay, that's a good
we've seen it a fair bit in particularly, I guess you're right there, Ray, in around, before Brexit, it didn't maybe matter so much for certain goods movements, but we've seen it a lot in the food sector, and in terms of the buying power is quite important. So, a small supplier of goods selling to a major retailer is often being required to, or being requested that they sell their goods DDP. Which they're delighted to have the new business, but of course it has a whole number of further implications that they are both the exporter but also the importer into that new jurisdiction, and then of course registering for VAT, etc. So it's one to be careful of, maybe.
Interesting. Okay, so the next question: if we use a freight company as our imports agent, do we have to register for the new AES system, or does this responsibility continue with our agent?
I'll take that one, Deirdre, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So if they're using a freight company as their imports agent, they shouldn't. It's the AIS system for imports. They shouldn't have to register. It is the agent. So the AES system, I would imagine they mean the AIS system.
Yeah.
That is the custom system. And normally what happens is that agents have a commercial interface into the custom system, which, you know, would normally include the new computerized transit system as well. So if their agent are doing their actual import declarations, then no, they don't need to. They would just need to, as I suppose everyone has said earlier, they are still responsible for the quality of the information that the agent inputs into the customs declaration on their behalf. So it's very important that they give very clear instructions, but they wouldn't need to be linking into it. The only reason they would need to link into the commercial interface, to link into the AIS system for imports or the AEP system for exports, would be if they wanted to do the declarations themselves.
Okay, well, can I ask a question then? So AIS imports, AEP exports, what's the equivalent on the northern side? Sorry, Ray, you were going to say something there as well.
Yeah, it could actually be AES, because the new system, the new export system, is actually coming in early 2023. So it could be the automated export system. So
right, maybe that's what they mean, is it?
Yeah, and it's pretty much the same answer. Once you have your YORI number, it will be valid on the AES system, similar to today's AEP exports. So your freight agent or your customs agent, we just need to do the relevant software updates and all that. And there's loads of information on the website. Just if you're unsure that they're updating their systems, just send them an email to make sure they're aware of it. But there's lots of communications going from revenue to all the agents and to all the software providers at the moment in preparation for 2023. So from a business point of view, your YORI number will be valid. It's just making sure that your customs agent is taking the relevant steps to update their software.
Yeah, what probably prompted it was Revenue recently wrote to all traders just advising of the introduction of AES and asking people if they were ready or if their agents were ready. So if you've got somebody doing exports on your behalf already, you just need to check with them that they're preparing and getting ready for it, for the changeover. So it's the start of the kind of information going out to the trade in general. But as I say, if you've got an agent who's doing export for you already, well then just direct a question to them and satisfy yourself that they're covered.
Great. Can I ask a question then? So how do those systems correspond with the northern equivalent? What is the northern equivalent to that?
The northern equivalent is the customs declaration system, and the UK will be changing from chief to the customs declaration system as well. And it's all based on the AIS system, the Irish import system, and the AES system, which is replacing the AEP system, which is the old kind of SAD-based system. And they're all based on the same kind of the same system, and they kind of look, although they might have slightly different data input requirements, they all kind of look very similar and look for the same kind of information.
And in terms of the system, so I know, Gareth, correct me if I'm wrong, that Northern Ireland are currently using CDS and UK suppliers are currently using Chief, but UK suppliers will be moving to CDS, as you said, Vera, later on in the year.
Yeah,
does anybody think there'll be implications in the supply chain if the GB supplier isn't up to speed on that, or what? Is there anything you should ask your supplier now, or do you think that will be okay?
I think most of them will be using agents, you know, so they're going to automatically change over to CDS.
Okay.
TSS is done through CDS. So.
Okay.
I think one of the things, Deirdre, that has come up, but I don't know whether, as Gareth said, you know, a lot of companies will be using agents. And a lot of the time, if there's a deferred account number, it could be the agents that they're using, and it's the agent that would make sure that the changeover happens. Just if it's a UK traders DAN account that's being used, now that would be more if you were for imports into the UK, so it wouldn't really affect companies in the north as much. But the chief account and the CDS account, they're not using the same accounts. So they're not using the same bank. So basically there's a whole process you have to go through
Right.
if you have a deferred account number
Okay.
on Chief, where you need to reset it up on CDS.
I know we have more questions in the Q&A here, but it's just, we had a couple of questions that came in. Martina will know this from the Brexit Advisory Service, but we've had questions coming in on transit, okay? So one of the questions that I kind of thought would be good to ask today would be, do you know the difference between simplified transit procedure and the normal transit procedure? And also then, if somebody could maybe tell us what is an authorised consignee? So 2 questions there.
I'll take that, Deirdre. So I suppose with just to maybe kind of look at it in a wider context, transit, what is transit? And it's a way of moving goods through another customs jurisdiction without having to, you know, submit import-export declarations at the border or pay VAT and duty. So an example of transit would be if you were going to move goods, say, from GB through the territory of the Republic of Ireland and then up to Northern Ireland. So it's actually a UK movement, but it's going through the territory of the Republic of Ireland, so a third country. When the goods, there's a kind of couple of different principles around transit. One is that they have to move under a guarantee. And in the case of Northern Ireland, the TSS actually have a guarantee. So if you're using the TSS system for your transit movement, you can use the TSS guarantee. Alternatively, you might interact a lot with customs and have something called a comprehensive guarantee, where if you applied for transit at the time of applying for that comprehensive guarantee, your transit movements would be covered on that. You could also have a cash guarantee, and they're usually underpinned by financial institutions. One of the other principles is that you have an office of departure and an office of destination. So with that movement that I was just talking about, your office of departure would be in GB and your office of destination would be in Northern Ireland. So that with the normal procedure, the system that you use for transit is called the new computerized transit system. So the system that you use for that, you can, if you're doing it by the normal process, you would create, you would open a transit on the new computerized transit system, but you would have to actually physically take the goods to a customs office of departure. They would check the paperwork, inspect the goods, and then they would print off the transit accompanying document. And when the goods get to the destination, you would again present the goods to the customs office of destination, and they would do something called ending the transit, which is what that has to be done to actually release the guarantee. So those are kind of some of the principles around transit. And sorry, what was the second part?
It was just about the authorised consignee. How where they fit in that? Yeah,
so that's the normal way of doing it. Then there are simplified custom or transit procedures. So if it's simplified, it means that a trader or an entity or a forwarder can act as the customs office of departure. So they can actually so they can open the transit in the new computerized transit system, but you can also print off the transit accompanying document, and the goods, this is at departures, the authorized consignor. So instead of having to present the goods to the customs office of departure, it can all be done at the trader's premises or at the agent's premises. And then when the goods get to the office of destination, again, instead of needing to present the goods, you can actually, it can go to the authorized consignee, and it's the authorized consignee that can, there are messages that go back between the authorized consignee and the customs offices, customs transit offices. And basically they can end the transit at their actual premises, which releases the guarantee. So that's kind of just some of the principles around it.
Perfect. And if somebody wanted to be an authorised consignee, does anybody know how long it would take to get, I guess, registered as one?
It's a little bit more. So an authorised consignor is a lot more kind of straightforward because it's the point of departure. The goods were already, the goods can be. It's easier to visually inspect them. With an authorised consignee to become one, and I'm not 100% sure of the nitty-gritty of the rules in Northern Ireland, but it can be a little bit more complicated because it's what has to happen to end the transit, or what's supposed to happen technically to end the transit, is that the goods have to be visually inspected on arrival, and the goods have to be unloaded and looked at and checked against the paperwork, and then there's a message sent back to the actual customs office to say that the results are satisfactory. So to get the authorised consignee approval, you kind of have to have a facility where you can actually offload vehicles. So it's a little bit, I know actually maybe Ray could answer that one for the South. I think it can take a couple of months anyway, but Ray might know more specifically.
Yeah, there's time, there's time limits under the UCC, the Union Customs Code. I'm almost certain it's 3 months, so from application. But usually what happens is, like that, what Vera was saying, that there's usually a bit of toing and froing before they formally apply, just to make sure that the form is as good as possible, and like that they're aware of all the different requirements. So if anyone is thinking of applying for authorised consignee, I would recommend contacting the relevant section. I can't think of the email address off the top of my head, but I can send it to Deirdre afterwards to share it, and they can contact the relevant area. And it's just useful to, rather than doing a formal application on the system for it, just talk to the area first. They'll flag a few things to you, and they'll just speed up the process a bit better, because once it goes into that formal process, it all has to be done through the system. But there is time limits once that formal application does go in.
Right. Okay. Great. Very helpful.
Just to finish on that one, the transit was always going to be, or always was, a really useful tool for moving goods, particularly using the land bridge. And what we've seen recently now is a little bit more normalization in trade flows, a little bit less of goods which had diverted going directly to continent. Those figures are down now on vessels sailing ex-ROI, and we can see an increase then back to the UK and using the land bridge. So particularly for carriers, it's worthwhile having a transit or having the facility to do that. And just on the last bit, we have authorised consignor and consignee. The consignee also needs to have a temporary storage facility authorization. So in old money, that's the customs warehouse. So the goods are discharged from the transit into the customs warehouse and then cleared back into free circulation. So you need to have that facility in place. But what it does is it takes the border away from the ports and the airports and brings it into the warehouse. And that's a really positive step. It avoids the congestion, etc. So transits are definitely something well worth looking at.
Okay. And it's a space, I suppose. We probably need space then. We need to, you need to have premises.
Yeah, they need to be of a standard, and security and everything else. So yeah, is the short word.
Gareth, you were going to say something there?
Yeah, I have only experience of dealing with the TSS transit procedure, and there's 5 authorised consignees, as Derek said, to save going to, if you're from Fermanagh, and heading to Belfast Port to get cleared. There's one in Fermanagh, one in Armagh, one in Uri, one in Ballymena, and Armagh City itself. You have a list of those, Deirdre, haven't you?
Well, you sent them to me, but I wouldn't get them out over this session here.
No,
but,
yeah. But if anybody wants to make an avail of those, I'm personally aware of the Fermanagh one, and they have quite a big yard, as Derek said, big facilities, big warehouses. And in order to get approved, they would need that.
Okay, so if anybody can send Gareth, you'd be happy enough to share that information. I'll not send it out from InterTradeIreland because it's obviously, it wouldn't be mine to share. If that's okay, but yeah. Okay, so I'm going to move forward then to the next question, which is statement of origin. Without a statement, is it a fact that a higher tariff could be charged?
Yes.
Brendan?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you need the statement of origin to be able to claim the preference, and the require that precise, under the trade deal that you're claiming the preference under, it'll say what is required, as a statement, as that proof of origin. So if it's under the EU UK TCA deal, then it'll say precisely what that is. I mean, it's the statement of origin or the supplier's declaration, or that it may be that you have to get a certificate from from a chamber of commerce if you're trading, further afield. But there's also the option not to claim preference. You don't have to. If it's too cumbersome or burdensome, you can decide not to claim the preference. But yeah, you do need that certificate to claim the preference.
Okay, and just is there something about if the tariff is under 3%, or is there something right? If I got that wrong, no. If you're the difference in your tariff between the UK GB and the European Union is less than 3%, do you pay the tariff? Does anybody know that? Just ignore that comment. We'll have a look at that another time. Anyway, so we're going to move forward, and then we'll do a few more questions, and then we'll do a quick poll. So this is one for you, Ray. I think it's a follow-on to one of the questions they asked. Ray, you're referring to an agent as a declarant. UCC states that the declarant can be any person. So does AIS allow for a third party to be a declarant except the importer or the representative? Having different parties stated as importer, declarant and representative. So there's some numbers here. You might know what they mean. I don't.
The AIS system. I think you can enter, there's obviously a declarant and an importer. I think a representative can be included on it. Derek might know from doing some of the declarations quicker than I will on it.
Yeah, for sure. I think the question they're asking, Ray, is can the declarant be the importer, or can they be any person? Effectively, the declarant who is making the declaration. Anyone can make the declaration, so long as in the revenue aspect that they've got a digital certificate and they're registered with Ross. Revenue can then identify who the declarant is. We then get into the stage of the declarant making the declaration on behalf of the importer. We look for direct or indirect representation authorization to make sure that we're authorized to make that declaration. The importer may want to make the declaration themselves, and in that case, they put in a slightly different code. We put in 2 for direct representative, we put in 1 for the trader, and we're identifying that we're importing the goods in our own name. So an agent can act as your declarant, but you can also do it yourself. But you must be registered within the jurisdiction. So a UK company, if they're not registered in Ireland, wouldn't be able to be the declarant in Ireland, and vice versa in the UK.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so we have another question here. I'm going to read this one. So we imported product from a supplier in the UK by courier. The product is UK manufactured and the invoice value is £2,039.31. On the C&E weekly report, there's a charge for CCT of €180 and the VAT is €559.39. Is there anything we can do to avoid paying the €180 CCT?
The statement of origin, if it's UK origin, they can claim under the preference. The only thing is you need to claim for preference at the time of importation, so they may not be able to retrospectively do it, but definitely something to look at for any future orders to make sure that the statement of origin is included on it.
Okay, and again, a good employer relation or supplier relations is going to be very important there. So knowing who your supplier is and speaking to them and understanding, do they know what about their product?
And even talking to whoever's come that courier, if they're using your EORI number, if it's just they're not using your EORI number, then it's just making sure that the supplier is told to make that claim for, if they might have the statement of origin on the invoices and might have just not included on the customs declaration. If that's the case, they can make a request, but if there's no statement of origin on those invoices, then you can't make that request afterwards. So it's just depending on what way you got it. So it might have just been an error in submission of the declaration that they didn't claim it. So
but worth following up.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the simplified transit and a number have done that. Hi, could you advise on the following? We buy materials from GB manufacturer in Northern Ireland and sell to customers in Northern Ireland and our intercompany business in ROI. On TSS, are these goods then at risk? Gareth, would that be one you could take?
I would say yes.
Yes. Okay. Fair enough. Okay, so with outward processing, the courier has stated they will not stamp the P02 form and we will need to contact revenue to retrospectively have it stamped, ? I thought this form needed to be done at the time when the goods were crossing the border. What can be done in these situations? So I'm wondering, this must be north to south for which there is no customs paperwork, but if there's a GB interaction in that, then so I'm going to read this. With outward processing courier, has stated they will not stamp the P02. Does anybody even know what that form is?
I don't, Deirdre. Just
No.
gonna maybe Google it.
Okay, well, if somebody has put this into the chat, please come in and give us a bit more detail. For goods that are going north, south, south, north, there are no customs paperwork required. But if, again, your goods are coming from outside of that customs territory, either GB and the EU, depending on the customs route, then there will be customs forms. And again, we probably just need more information on that one. So I'm going to move forward.
Sorry, that form, Deirdre, it's an outward processing form. I just checked there.
Right, okay.
I don't know the other details of it. If
Yeah.
the email to Brexit queries, it's my own unit, brexitqueries@revenue.ie. I can just contact the relevant unit on it. Again, I just can't think of the relevant unit's email address. So if this is brexitqueries@revenue.ie.
We'll get these links out after the webinar as well. So okay, so I'm just going to put that one there. So we use agents to do all our import customs paperwork. What paperwork should we be keeping on file in the office in the event of a revenue audit? Brandon?
Yeah, sure. And I see Vera is also typing an answer there. So Vera, you might come in as well. I thought, sure. So in terms of what you need kind of proof of everything that's been completed on your behalf here that the agent has done for you. So you know, the customs declaration, the number of you know, the origin and the statements on origin that you would have used for that particular movement, and any, you know, procedure codes, evidence of those that have been used on your behalf. So effectively, a kind of a full paperwork trail of the movement of the goods, and the interaction with customs authorities. And if you have any you know, contractual clauses from your deals with your suppliers or your customers, also helpful to keep them there, you know, evidence of what the Incoterms are, etc. Vera, did you have anything you wanted to add there?
I think you pretty much covered it, Brendan. Just maybe, you know, I suppose licenses, if there were controlled goods and there were any licenses required. Just if it's not straightforward as well, you know, if it wasn't maybe, you know, easily evidenced, then how you arrived at the customs valuation, particularly if you weren't using method 1, maybe if you were using any of the other 5 methods. But other than that, Brendan covered it all there.
Great. We have a few more questions in here, and I have a couple also from previously. So I'm going to do very, very quickly a very quick poll, if that's okay. I know, look, we don't want to torture you, but it is very, very quick, I promise you. So I think Orla's going to do that wee poll now. Okay, so
just one more minute. We're just at 41. Just people are still answering. Just one more.
Very impatient, Orla.
Yeah, just one more minute. We're nearly there. Yeah, I'll let you know when it slows down.
No problem.
Okay, Deirdre, you can move on there and people can continue to answer it, and I'll end it in a minute or two. Is that okay?
Lovely. Just a question that comes in quite a lot, Martina. I know you've mentioned this one because you've got it from a lot of businesses as well. Just what is a supplementary declaration? Could somebody tell us, please, what that is and why you use it?
I could take that one. This is meant, what is the supplementary declaration in terms of the TSS, is it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so the TSS process is, it kind of takes a normal declaration, a full frontier declaration, and it splits it into 2. So instead of having, so the process basically, it's to simplify the whole thing and to have it so that the trader only gets involved after the goods have moved. So initially, the haulier enters the entry summary declaration into the TSS system. This then, the TSS system automatically creates the simplified frontier declaration from this, and this allows the goods to actually move into the customs territory of Northern Ireland, and it's the TSS system then sends a message to the trader to enter or to complete the supplementary information. So if it's not for controlled goods, with the information, the only information that goes into the ENS is the vehicle details, I suppose you'd call it the master details around the movement. So the number of pallets, the description of the type of goods, the vehicle details. But at that stage, it doesn't really go into kind of any of the commodity code information, any of the commercial invoice information. So the supplementary declaration is where you put all of that information in. You put in the commodity code, you put in kind of, if there was any, licenses or commodity conditions, or you kind of get into the nitty-gritty of the item information around the commodity when you're doing the supplementary declaration. And at that stage as well, you declare, are the goods are they staying in Northern Ireland? Are they at risk? You choose your codes. And at that stage, kind of any VAT and duties owing, no, you might be postponing the VAT, and there may be no duty, but technically any VAT and duties owing would be paid at that stage. So generally, that's kind of what it is. I don't know whether you wanted to kind of be more specific around it. I know Derek does a lot of TSS declarations, so
no, that's perfect. It's just sort of an overview really of it, because we had got a lot of I guess feedback from businesses, Gareth, even from yourself, saying that there had been sort of businesses looking support on supplementary declarations and how to handle them and things. So it was just if there was anything that you could say to any businesses here today that might help them get better at doing them, or any tips or tricks. Maybe Gareth, that's something you could say.
Well, I do provide training on it. Now it's quite detailed. And the only thing I would say, there's still quite a few people out there that have outstanding declarations, and the soft landing of HMRC, I would imagine, will end quite soon.
Okay.
The stipulation that you have to have the declarations done by the 4th of the following month will be enforced more rigorously.
Okay.
To date, it's been a soft approach, and just with the new regulations and the volume, and people are new to the whole process.
Yes.
But from an audit point of view, as Brendan would say, I think further down the line it will start to be a lot of audits on this.
Okay.
One of the challenges, Deirdre, is that the process is usually kicked off by the transport operator, and then that creates the record that moves on from there, that ultimately ends in the supplementary declaration being required. But the data which the transport operator puts in sometimes can be a bit vague, car parts, spares, or whatever, and it makes it very difficult for you then as a trader then to identify the actual shipment. So again, communication, make sure that your transport operator knows this is the reference we want you to use, this is the invoice we want you to use, etc. So you can identify it then easier at the supplementary declaration stage.
Okay, so this is really about getting the right information to the right people, and making sure that, I guess, you have a responsibility as a business to make sure that your data is correct and that your carrier has everything correct. Okay, so next question. If we buy a car that was first registered in Northern Ireland and then we bring it into Ireland, do we still have to pay the tax, or is it just for the cars brought from the UK that the tax is paid for? Gareth, you've said that you could answer that one.
Basically, no. If a car is bought in Northern Ireland, it's registered in Northern Ireland after the 1st of January 21, there should be no tariffs except VRT going into the south.
Okay, that's great. And we did get a question, Garth, on the margin scheme. If you don't mind, I'm going to have a look to see what it was. So I heard there's an upcoming change to the margin scheme for motor vehicles purchased and imported into Northern Ireland from GB. Could someone confirm when this is coming into effect and clarify how it will work?
I can take that, Deirdre. Yes, from the 1st of October, there's a new second-hand motor vehicle export refund scheme, which will apply to margin scheme cars which are purchased by Northern Ireland traders or Southern Ireland traders.
Okay.
Effectively, they're allowed to claim the VAT element, even though, you know, a sixth of the, so say it was £12,000 for the car, it'd be £2,000 to rebate to be, this will be done through their VAT return. Effectively, it's turning the margin scheme car into a VAT qualifying car, and the full VAT would be due on the sales price. There is going to be a mechanism for EU businesses to reclaim this as well. The detail of it is not out yet, but there's a guidance on this from HMRC on the 25th of March, which I can share later.
Okay.
If you want to put it.
Yep, that's great. We'll share that out.
Yeah, so
in the webinar.
The devil in the detail is not out yet. Further information on the scheme will be published in May 22. But yes, there is pending changes on that.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so look, we're coming closely to the end. I've got a few more questions here. I hope to get through them all. So how can a supplier in the UK deliver goods DDP into Ireland with no Irish VAT presence? Is there any way without registering for Irish VAT? Ray?
No.
No.
Short answer.
Yeah, that's all right.
It can be done as a, they can register for an IEORI number or an EU EORI number not established. But if there's any VAT, they need to have the VAT registration too. But again, they can be set up as a non-established VAT registration number too. It is possible. Again, it's like Garth was saying earlier, I think, or Brendan, sorry, was saying that if you're DDP, you're taking on additional roles. So maybe you do need to change those sale terms.
Okay, thank you. Okay, hi, we are a manufacturer and we send the manufactured material from an EU country to a UK branch instead of Ireland by mistake. Do we still have to pay the tax if we plan to get the material back to Ireland, even if it's to bring it back into the same company? So can you fix your customs errors?
That left the EU territory as such. So if you're bringing it back in, it will be customs declarations again, obviously, but there is options available in terms of return goods relief. I presume it was done within the last year, and you may be able to avail reliefs that way. But it's just, again, there's steps required. You need to have evidence of that export from the EU into UK. And if it's all the one company, they should have all the details. It should be fairly straightforward. But if it was done by a different company, it maybe just take a bit more time to get those proofs to be able to claim that return goods relief. Return goods relief.
Okay, that's great. We just remember return goods relief. We might send a little bit of information out about that after the webinar as well. So statement of origin, when dealing with a UK company, when do you need a Chamber of Commerce cert? Would a manufacturer's cert suffice?
So I feel I may have caused that confusion with mentioning the Chamber of Commerce cert for trading internationally. But when it comes to, I presume that the focus here is on, you know, UK Irish trade.
Yeah.
And so you know, under the trade and cooperation agreement, what you need is you need a supplier's declaration. So you don't need a certificate from a Chamber of Commerce. Firstly, just to say, to claim the preference, there are kind of two documents you might need. One is a statement on origin that you can make yourself in a very defined format. And I can send you the link if you want to share that, Deirdre.
Yeah.
Or you know, so a statement of origin or a supplier's declaration, and those are the only things you need. It's a lot easier to claim origin, and you don't need to go through the chamber.
Brilliant. And what I can say is, on our Brexit digital content, now that you've just mentioned it, Brexit 2022, we actually have the download of the supplier's declaration there and a sample and all the details you need to know. So we will get that sent out after, and you should be able to go in and have a look at that. Okay. There was a small difference in quantity. Right, okay, so there was a small difference in the quantity between the commercial invoice and the final invoice. Do we need to do a supplementary declaration for the difference, which in this case was €300? So if you've changed the value of the product that you've sent from the initial commercial invoice to the end final one.
From a revenue point of view, they mentioned supplementary, so I'm not sure if that's related to TSS, But if it's in revenue, if it's an import declaration that needs to be amended, yes, you would need to amend it if it's affecting declaration. Basically, your customs declaration should match your commercial invoice in all aspects.
So it's back really to the information that you give your carrier. You have to make sure it's correct. Yeah. It takes me back to my older years when I worked in a large company where we had to give values of our shipments, and it's so important that you give the right information because it does make a difference. So. Okay.
There's only one value, Deirdre, that's the correct one.
That is the correct, Derek. I love that statement.
And sometimes what happens is that it might be depending, and they may issue a pro forma invoice waiting for the final weights to come in.
Yes.
Or sort of quantifies it. But I think you need to look at your own internal processes there to see why can't we put the correct value on at the point of export? What's stopping us from doing that? And that then will remove the need for amending any entries afterwards.
Yeah, yeah. Brilliant.
Okay. If it was, Deirdre, the TSS as well, they can go in now. They can go in and raise a case against a submitted declaration. So maybe that would be the way to go about it.
Okay. Well, that's a good tip. Thank you. Okay, so we've answered that one here. Just sorry. Sorry, nearly there. We're coming to the last two. Somebody's asking Martina to send on Brexit information. Martina, you okay to send that on?
Yeah, I will do. Yeah.
Okay.
All the links and details there, but I spoke about earlier then, yeah.
Great. And then a UK truck driven through Belfast and into Ireland from a UK supplier and kept here as decided to purchase afterwards. What can be done? Is it a declaration retrospectively at Dublin Port? Who wants to take the last question?
Not simple to end it. Is it actual truck or is it?
It sounds like it, yeah. Sounds like it, yeah.
In normal circumstances, it's retrospectively done at the first point of import into the EU, which would be in Northern Ireland, so it'd be HMRC, CDS.
Okay.
And then if they're obviously, they can make awareness of it. But again, that final sale, so the Irish company that's buying it, I presume it's an Irish company that's buying it here, that sales invoice also just need to be ensured it's correct, because that's if they're listed as, if it's a sale between a UK VAT number and an Irish VAT number, then ultimately they would have the responsibility for covering the customs declaration. So again, if you've bought the goods, any goods, and it's from a UK VAT number, there should be a corresponding customs declaration to match against it, because if you are subject to afterwards to any audits or checks, there would be a check on any declarations, or sorry, any invoices you have from a UK company if there's a customs declaration to match it.
Great, thank you. There is actually one more question in the chat, and I'm going to read it out because I don't think we did see this one. So this is how a clearance agent created a SAD on the AES system in January 21. However, they've made several errors on the SAD, and they can no longer access the AES to amend this SAD. How can they amend this SAD, and what are our options if we have a customs audit? Good question.
They should be. I'm assuming it's actually the AP system that was available for imports in January 2021, but it phased out in the middle of last year. There should be the declarant should still have access to do those declaration amendments. If they contact eCustoms at revenue.ie just with the details, it could either be the company or the declarant themselves. There should be, the system is open for the next, because you're allowed to do corrections for up to 3 years. The old system is available for corrections. So there should be, it could be just something with their system or software that they just need to be able to submit that. So it could be that.
Brilliant. That is fantastic. Thank you so much. And any of the links that we've talked about and spoken on, we will follow it up. And I just think, thank you so much. I mean, we in InterTradeIreland, as well as the businesses on the webinar, are so appreciative of the information that you're sharing today. And I firmly believe that it is helpful and helping businesses. And thank you so much. It really is making a difference. So thanks a million for everybody being here today. Thank you to all the businesses. I'm delighted that we got again to do this. And if there is a will and a want to do more of them, we're definitely here. And thank you so much again to all the service providers who work so tirelessly as well for us in many, many ways. So it's a lovely day, and I think the weather's going to be good for the weekend. And also thank you to Martina for telling us about the Brexit voucher and the digital content as well. And Orla, very much, always here helping us, making sure that we get through our hiccups on webinar and everything else. And that's OMD Consultancy. Thank you very much. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Deirdre.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks all. Thanks, Martina.